Rural Housing Trust to order. It is 7:04, 7:05. Let's do roll call. Who we get on? So, there it is.
Nicole.
This is easy for somebody.
Nicole, Dan,
Nicole?
and Brittany on Zoom. Yeah.
Nicole, present. Dan?
Brittany.
All right. Brittany?
Here.
All right. Matt?
Matt's here.
Colleen?
Here.
Here. Okay. Now we're here. First item on the agenda is updates on 25 Worcester Street. So, want to introduce yourself just to the audience again and give us that?
I will. I'm Andy Howarth. I am with Worcester Community Housing Resources in Worcester, and we are the proposed developer of the Worcester Street project, which we are tentatively calling Grafton Place, unless there's some reason that wouldn't be a good name for it.
Seems great.
I like it.
Okay. It sounds like it would be one of the blue properties on the Monopoly board, doesn't it? So we are, I'll give you an update. We were not able to submit a preliminary application for funding, which would not have been funded anyway last year because they went out of the normal order of what would be called an open round for financing.
Mm-hmm.
They devoted virtually all of last year's allocation to housing with permanent housing with supportive services, which is targeted toward people that are either homeless or high risk of homelessness. This is not unexpected. But this year they are committed to a general open round, which will be sometime in this fall. Their definition of fall starts in August and ends just before Christmas. So we don't really know when the round will be out. And again, to just be clear, generally the state makes you apply twice before they actually give you a funding award. So, but because the first one is to sort of test your mettle and stick-to-itiveness and whether you respond to their concerns and their design issues and so forth. But again, it's the sort of thing that you just get used to in this business. You got to ask twice, and the second time is the charm. Sometimes it takes three. I've had three, but on this one, I believe that we'll have a very good chance of getting all of the feedback we need from our submission this year. To that end, we have sought and received pre-development financing for the first level of engineering and survey and architectural work.
From which department or organization did you?
That is from the Community Economic Development Assistance Corporation, which is known universally as CEDAC, C-E-D-A-C, and that will provide for the first level of cats out for preliminary, mostly the survey, the engineering, and the architect unfortunately has to wait, and the lawyer has to wait for most of their money until the next round. If we get to the point that CEDAC says it's feasible, that is sort of the entryway to applying for the State Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities money, which funds the actual project. And at that point, we have two options for getting the rest of the feasibility money. One option is to get a further advance from CEDAC. CEDAC has loaned us $1 million on our big hotel conversion project in Worcester, which is, as you know, a very expensive thing to do in general, and this is a particularly expensive project. So they can put some serious dough in as needed to move the project along. We also, if the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities is not ready to give you a little more push down the road, there's another source which is called the Massachusetts Life Initiative, which is an initiative of the life insurance industry to lend out their accrued profits for pre-development work and acquisition work and various other types of money that is hard to come by. We have a good relationship with them, and we've already opened preliminary negotiations to tell them that we may come knocking at their door after CDEC sort of green lights are proceeding further down the line. So we have a plan for each stage of the activities. We are doing our final engineer selection. This project is one of the ones that one of the very few projects where we don't have our first choice of site engineers and site engineering firms, because our guy and his firm happen to be the town's engineer. And that's a conflict of interest that you can't really get away from. So we've narrowed it down to two firms that we're having final interviews for. I can probably tell you their names. One is in Acton, and one is from Lowell. And they have experience on working on projects of this time. One is called Chess Engineering, and one is Stemsky and McNary. I don't know if any members of the committee or folks in town have feedback on that, but we're more than happy to listen to any experience that anybody had with them. But those are the two final candidates for engineering.
Who's your architect?
What were their names?
Chess Engineering and Stamsky. Gotta find it.
Dan McMary.
And McNary, yes. Stamsky is Stamski, and McNary is Nary. So those are the two final candidates. We'll pick one of those to be the site engineer for the project. Our architect, DHK, the initiating architect who did the preliminary design, retired earlier this year, but his partner is taking on the project, and we've had good conversations, and they're still headed in the right direction.
Okay.
So surveying, we're going to have somebody out soon to do a survey. I know there has been a preliminary survey, but it was a long time ago. And so you will see somebody within the next 4 to 6 weeks, I would say, out there with their theodolites and tape measures and whatnot. And that is R&B survey, Rob Boyd, who works closely with our friend Mike and Graves Engineering. So we have great confidence in them.
Great.
That's the immediate stage of physical work and design work. Again, you don't proceed to much beyond the design concept work that we've already done until you have the site engineering laid out. That becomes really the next critical piece of the design.
And that won't happen until the money's secured.
No, we'll be able to get a preliminary design based on the funding we already have.
I see. Okay, good.
So we'll in other words, we'll know things like how the foundation has to be laid out, how much grading needs to be done on the site, where the utility connections will likely go. All of those sorts of things we should be able to get in this first feasibility round. And again, the architects will do some preliminary work. They're not going to go into design development phase, as it's called, until we get some more money. But you get a little money, you do a little work, decide it's all going to fit together and be feasible. They give you a little more money. You do some design based on the design you already did. And at that point, you turn that into a funding proposal. Now, while this is all going on, we have some, and I will put this into an email directed, I guess, to Fiona and Amber, or to the trust, but there are some questions specifically on zoning issues, and it has to do with what kind of development the building inspector. This is mostly a building inspector question, somewhat of a planning office function as well, but really the question is what type of building you would consider this under. Let me read from the World According to Rodman. This is zoned medium density residential. Appendix A says that a major residential development defined as the creation and is in a residential district of more than 5 buildable lots by subdivision or otherwise, or the construction of more than 5 single-family lots or contiguous lots in common ownership is permitted with a special permit. However, Appendix A also provides that a multifamily dwelling, defined as a building designed for and occupied exclusively as a home or residence and containing 3 or more units, is not permitted in the R20 zone. If this is a multifamily building, which our attorney seems to think it will be, we will follow one path through Chapter 40, and if it is considered as a, what was it again? Medium density, major residential development, there's a different option.
Right.
So that's one thing we need to get an early. I'll put this in writing and get it out to you all tomorrow or Monday. Tomorrow's looking pretty crazy, but that's one of the early decisions we have to make on which zoning path to take. The other thing that we need to get that would be very helpful to get some preliminary information is the Conservation Commission, and whether there has been any previous flagging on the site done of wetlands, or if there is any determined wetland area or indicator, vegetation, or anything else that has been found on adjoining sites or abutting. It doesn't have to be legally adjoining, but legally abutting sites. That information would be very helpful in, again, kind of making a determination of how we proceed and which specific types of zoning or regulatory relief we're seeking. We're not going to plan on getting into a fist fight with the Conservation Commission, even though
Thank you.
even though most of the conservation commissioners that I have occasionally encountered in the past have tended to be older than I am and more fragile. That ain't the case anymore, and the law is certainly on their side. It makes no sense to butt heads over whether a spotted salamander could be in this area or whether the particular type of reed is a true wetland indicator or is a debatable indicator. So rest assured, I'm not going to take on any conservation commissioners in arm wrestling or fistfights. It is not a good way to get things done.
So Fiona, can you get that information to them?
Yes, absolutely. I will. I was actually just checking on the GIS to see if it will be in Concom's jurisdiction. But in any event, I'll follow up, and also Amy, I'll follow up about the permitting path. Without getting too much into the weeds this evening.
Yeah.
Major residential special permits,
Yep.
not the pathway. So we'll talk, and we can have an internal meeting and then present to the trust.
That sounds perfect.
I would imagine that that's true. I also can't imagine that you're going to run into wetlands issues on that particular site. But you never know. It always helps to check.
And again, one of the things that I have run into in the past is disappearing wetlands, where there's a seasonal brook, and it forms pooling, and it isn't necessarily on the property, but it's close enough to the property that you have to consider the buffering and the incorporation
Yeah,
of
I'm
it.
not seeing anything. I mean, our GIS is just estimates, so, grain of salt. But yeah, let me touch base with the conservation agent, and then all of us can get on call and do it.
Fantastic.
So just speaking of fistfights, just so you're aware, we've already gotten some feedback from members of the select board that the look and the feel of this is going to be important to them.
Absolutely.
It is one of Grafton's more historic neighborhoods, and there's going to be a lot of neighbor interest in this, and some maybe even organized. I'd imagine the route that you're going to go is 40B. Presently, we're in Safe Harbor, so it's going to be a process. But one that would be, I think, made more smooth if at an early stage input was taken from the neighborhood about what's it look like, what are the materials, what's the design going to be like, and that sort of thing. And I'm usually been come short a million times before.
Well, the preliminary stuff that we submitted originally is based on a low-scale pitched roofs, a horizontal banding on the buildings to break up the vertical height, and other techniques. I've also done some. I've been doing this for a very, very long time, and we've done some sort of faux colonial stuff. I'm not generally a big fan of faking colonial architecture, but I think in terms of the masses of the layout as far as horizontal versus vertical, of trim at each level, of corner boards or quoins, cornice moldings. There are a lot of things you can do without trying to create antique shop look, which generally, when you scale it up to be the size of housing, looks horrible.
Yes.
So,
There's another project a little bit down the way that took nods from our new library design and kind of incorporated that. On your site, there used to be a school. Have you seen photographs of that?
I have not. And if anybody on the historical commission or anywhere else has stuff that we can send to, that's the kind of stuff we'd love to incorporate.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yep. I mean, you should just picturing it. If you have seen a high school ever built in 1880,
Yeah.
It's brick, it's square, it's stern looking but old. So you're not going to do that with this housing. But there are architectural nods to that sort of thing.
Yep. And again, I'm very sensitive to historical context in the design process. I grew up in Oxford and have been an advisor to the historical commission there and participated in a number of historical groups in Oxford. And we have a missing high school that we can't even find a photograph of. And the architecture was so generic in the mid-1800 period that depending on when it was built, there are a dozen possibilities for the architectural style and kind of motif that it could have followed. So if you have actual photos of it from the time and of the layout of it on the property, that would be absolutely fantastic. That's the best thing to use as a guidepost.
Awesome. Great.
Yep, I can from that. We'll get you that in.
Oh my. Wow.
So just for the record, for anybody who watches this at home, Colleen, of course, has had a copy of the picture of the high school on her phone.
Naturally.
And it's beautiful. It's brick. It's kind of a Gothic
We can post this on
designs. Very nice. Yeah. All right. So again, my I don't want you to think we've been laying low in the woods, but there are only certain things that you can do until funding is available. We got our first tranche of funding, and it's off to the trotting races, not the galloping races yet, for right now. And as we make some progress and get our sort of overall design configured to fit with the zoning relief that we'd be looking for, and to fit with the HLC funding process, our consultant Rick Lefferts and I will be working on all of the various sources of funding that you can bring into this. One of the things that I think is extremely important that I will also put into my request is information on what your Council on Aging or Senior Center or other entities that work with plus 55 folks in town think the demand is focused on. Is the big spot for income need in terms of a bubble in the population, the bell curve of where people fall on the income scale? Is it the 60 to 80% income range? Are there a considerable number of people below 60%, or even below the 50% level? And I don't, again, I looked at the census statistics, but in terms of the demographics, if there are a considerable pool and priority of seniors who are below 30% of the area median income, which it is not as low as you might think it is, we'll need to try to put enough rental assistance units in there to be able to serve people that are at that level.
We have those. We have that information in our housing production plan that we can send
Yep.
to you. I used to have that information off the top of my head 5 years ago when I made the pitch for this land, but it's been 5 years, and now it's, of course, the data has changed. There are more older people, and the median income level's changed.
We just by response to that, in that things aren't always what they appear. The fastest growing population of homeless individuals in the city of Worcester are people 65 and over. That boggles my mind, but the unsheltered people that are sleeping on the streets have a higher rate of growth in the over 65 segment than any of the other segments. And if you add 55 to 65 plus, it's like a tidal wave.
And of course, Worcester County is one of the most competitive housing regions. I mean, that ties to
Exactly. Very expensive housing. So,
all right. Actually, one question for you. So if you don't get approved for funding this round between August and December, do you have to wait until another calendar year?
not necessarily a calendar. There's the HLC schedules multiple rounds a year. In theory, there are 2 a year. Some years there's only one.
Okay.
It also depends on funding resources, and some of the funding, while a lot of the resources are state resources, some of this depends on federal funds.
That's good.
So that also will have an effect.
All right.
And by the way, feedback I have gotten from HLC on an informal level and without anybody's names associated with it is that, gee, the town has really stepped up to the plate on getting back into safe harbor and encouraging affordable housing production. And I don't think there will be any political opposition to the town getting funding at all.
Well, that's great.
So,
Good. We're certainly trying.
is Mike Moore your senator?
He is.
Yeah. I know Mike very well, and I will talk to him about this, make him aware of this project, and that the town has been super supportive of it, because he does have some influence or chits at HLC.
Right.
So,
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in.
it was fun. I have a weird idea of fun.
We would guess. Please.
Have a wonderful weekend. You will hear from me by very early next week with the specifics on the zoning and conservation.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you.
Okay, next up on the agenda, updates on 17 and 27 Upton Streets. John Grant has joined us by Zoom. He has a couple requests for us to consider. One is to draft and potentially send a letter to in service of his financing, confirming that the Grafton Affordable Housing Trust is continuing to make its commitment to the project. And the next is a vote to consider extending the grant agreement through 2027, which I believe it's in place through 2026 right now. So, John, if you want to explain, first give us a little bit of an update on where we are, and then get into your requests.
5 years later, 5 years
I'm
later,
gonna turn it up more.
I think it was 5 years. I don't feel that old. It's been 5 years, absolutely. And we are ready to kick off the project. We are looking at, getting our permits in the month of April and looking at doing construction start on 27 Upton in May of this year.
Okay.
There are a couple of things we wanted you to consider. And by the way, first of all, let me thank you all for bearing with us through all this period of time. We went through COVID, we went through recessions, we went through upheavals in the banking industry and everything else. And I think the final product is going to be worth the wait. And so I appreciate the time you guys have spent bearing with us and your financial support through the front end of the project, which has really helped make it a great project. Let's talk about a few things. One is that the original agreement only went up to a certain date. Since we spent 4 or 5 years getting here, we wanted to extend it because part of it looks at actually offsetting taxes that wouldn't happen until the project opens, after construction is completed. And so what we're looking at right now is we start construction in May. It's going to be about 18 months, 14, 18 months to complete construction. So if we start in May, then you go May and then another 6 months after May, you're looking at starting to fill this place somewhere in October, November of 26, 27. So if you're filling it, you wouldn't have your first tax bill until 28, which is one of the reasons why we asked to extend the agreement between us. Now, beyond that, we want to talk about some other ways that we were thinking about for using the additional funds that you have, the remainder funds. And some of the suggestions are that we use some of the funds to offset the units, the 31 units that we have of affordable housing in this project's water district entrance fees, its sewer connection fees, and building permit fees. So all those fees that we have, we would break those down into 122 units, and then we multiply that by the 31 units that are affordable and pay those fees, which would reduce the amount of the outstanding by quite a bit. It would also help us in terms of getting the project off the ground because those front-end costs that we bear for the affordable units, and we don't really recoup that until we get income back or get the taxes back. So we'd like to consider that, and we can get down into the weeds with you on that and how we also would offset rental income for the taxes and create an overall statement, like a schedule, if you will, of what we agreed to do and memorialize that's something you guys agree with, because other than that, right now, it's widely open, whether it's taxes or other things that are being paid for with the additional funds. Do you guys understand what I'm talking about with that? Ed?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time since I read the grant agreement, so I'll have to go back through and, we went through a lot of rounds of negotiation about what we would pay for, what we wouldn't pay for. We certainly want to do everything we can to get the project up and running as quickly as we can. I guess, and I'll open this up for discussion with other people. Do you want to go through the rest of the stuff, or do you want to?
Yeah,
So
once we come to an agreement on what we're going to spend the money on, we'd probably like to put together, memorialize it in a document and date it.
Yeah.
And go forward with that. We'd like to get an extension of the grant through the end of construction. And that's what I was talking about as part of that too, is that if right now as the grant ends at a certain point in time, I think in 27 or something like that, but we should have it memorialized so that it doesn't end until after the construction's completed. And let's see. Finally, we want to obtain a written consent of the trust to the rights to the Affordable Housing Trust Agreement into the new entity. So instead of it being, the original agreement was with GSX Ventures, the new entity that owns the project will be 1727 Grafton Street LLC. And we can give you all the information on that entity, but the agreement shouldn't be with GSX anymore. It should be with the entity that actually owns the property, because that's the property that you guys will actually be associated with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, except it would be 1727 Upton Street LLC, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that makes sense. For everybody else's edification, that's really common for me as a lawyer. You see that all the time.
And I think there was one other thing we talked about. Originally, we had talked about, and this is about 4 or 5 years ago, about having Bell Partners manage the project. Right now, we've had talks with both Bell and MCO Housing Services, both of whom have done affordable housing, project management. And we selected MCO. We'll send you their information, take a look at. But if you got an agreement with us, we'd like to swap that over to them as the manager for the facility.
Okay.
That's about it. Yeah, beyond that, I guess we have now all the equity on board. We're finishing up with the banks right now, which I'm hoping by the end of, we have a term sheet, but we'll have the final terms. If you ever dealt with banks, there's terms, there's final terms.
Yeah.
So we're in final terms now, like we have the thumb screws out for the final terms. And so we're in that right now, but I'm hoping that we'll have the bank letter and terms by the end of next week.
Okay.
And so we're ready to get this project rolling and get the ground.
Okay. Kathleen, you had your hand raised?
Yes, I do. I have a couple of questions for Mr. Grant. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Have you closed on the purchase of this property with the town?
We are, we're in the process of that. There is an issue that we're talking with the town about because part of the closing, there was the codicil where they would be responsible for some of the environmental damages on the site. And so we might be able to further reduce the cost of the site by having them, or cost of the project, by having them pay for some of those damages. And we could either have them pay through outright cash or just do a reduction in the purchase price of the property. So that's going on right now with our attorney and their attorney. I think Brendan is going to be talking with Evan at the beginning of next week about this.
Because, that sort of goes to the tax situation. Right now it's owned by property's owned by the town, so it's tax exempt. But Massachusetts law requires a buyer who's not going to be tax exempt to pay pro forma taxes at the closing. And that's not anything that the trust has any control over.
No, I don't think we're thinking we have the money in there to pay the taxes. The issue right now really revolves around it's kind of an interesting issue. They knew that there was environmental waste on the site when they sold us the site, and they actually said in a statement that there was none. And so there's an issue now that we've done the studies and we've done lots of environmental and found about $230,000 worth of remediation required. Whether that's their responsibility, I think, to be honest with you, even at the state level, it's their responsibility to remediate the site before they sell it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we're at with that right now. But I can follow up with you, Kathleen, next week as soon as Evan and Brendan have their conversation.
No, that's okay. Because we're not that's not part, we're not the seller, so
Sure.
that's not as much of a concern. But, going back to the grant agreement, there's certain timing issues for funding from us. And some of it's requiring a building permit before you get anything else. And the next time after the building permit, you don't get any money until you're 50% through the project. So, we can certainly provide a letter that says, yes, we have the total amount that we're going to be giving, but it's not on day one.
Well, that's fine. I mean, what we're asking for is a letter that describes how that remainder of the funds are let out. What I'm suggesting is that if you add the funds allowed out to pay for the building permit portion and the sewer portion and the water portion of the permits required for the 31 units, that'd be helpful to the process. But it's not required. It was just something we thought that worked better.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and we can discuss that with you guys when we put the schedule together and you take a look at both options.
Yeah, I think the best way to go is if you were to get us that, we could put it on an agenda to have a discussion item and take a vote on it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we can do that probably in short order, probably next week.
Okay, that sounds good.
And that's about it. I mean, the other news, I guess, is that we also have financing and equity for 8 Pine, so that that project is moving towards construction. We'll make construction start for 8 Pine somewhere in June, July.
Great.
That will produce 316 units, of which 25% or 75 units will be affordable. So in total, you'll have 101 or something like that, affordable units in the town, or under construction in the town this coming year.
Fantastic.
Good.
Right, John, what was that unit count at 8 Pine again?
Well, there's 316 units at 8 Pine, of which 25% are affordable. So it's like 70, 75 or 71.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah. Yeah, 312 units was what was terminated.
Okay, I think it was,
Just wanted to make sure we're on track with the original permitting.
yeah. Okay.
All right. Anything else, John?
That's about it. Just want to thank you guys again for being with us and, putting this whole thing together. I think, like I said, I think it's going to be a great project and we're excited about seeing it come to life.
Yeah, us too. Can't wait to see a shovel in the ground.
I was going to say, when we do the groundbreaking, we'd like all you guys out there to just take a shovel with us. So
Absolutely.
I'll invite you guys to come out and we'll all get together for the big photo op.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right. Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Bye now.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, updates on lots 74, 52, and 48 at High Point Drive.
So I apologize. I had reached out to Laura Schufeld at MHP, and our schedule isn't initially aligned. So we're working on getting a call together to set up the initial meeting for the drafting of the RFP.
Okay.
I did want to talk to the trust this evening about a couple of things. I had spoken to a colleague of mine who's done a few of these, and when we're thinking about drafting the RFP and how much information we want to provide upfront and how much kind of due diligence the town wants to do, I think that that's something that we'll need to iron out, because there's money available for feasibility studies through the state that can probably pay for survey work and wetlands work and associated kind of design and permitting tasks that will offset some costs and kind of sweeten the deal for any potential respondents to the RFP. So, we don't have to, the trust doesn't have to take that approach necessarily. We can just start issuing the RFP and without any kind of feasibility study work done, and just kind of put a statement in the document that says it's on the developer to handle that. I am of the opinion, especially because one of the lots is challenging, is to go this route. However, by the time I would apply for something, we would find out if we actually got it. It wouldn't be till November, and then you still have to go through the process of the follow-up work. So we're looking at like a year out.
Yeah. the original developer might have done a lot of that work already, right?
Right, right. And I mean, there's definitely a lot, yeah, as you said, a lot of work that's been done before. I'd have to go back and kind of review what, specific, plans were done for those lots. It's just, I think I'm kind of, as we've seen kind of with 17 and 27 Upton Street, start digging and then find all sorts of fun things and whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can do beforehand, is something to consider.
Yeah.
Yeah, to the extent that we can remove barriers to mobilization on something like this, I think that's helpful. And Fiona, you've been great about this stuff, and I don't want to put more work on your plate than needs to be there. But if you want to take a look and see what's been done, and then make a determination if there's any further grant agreements we can apply for to get other work done, that would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fine. I definitely think that it's probably the best approach.
Yeah.
It's typical for towns to do that, and they usually get a better product in the end. The town will take on like the wetland surveying, the initial, kind of site plans, and then go from there. We have had some interest already. I forwarded an email to the Affordable Housing Trust email from Habitat for Humanity, so it's already garnering a lot of interest. But I think that this may be a good idea. And again, we don't have to make, the trust doesn't have to make a decision this evening. If you want to think about it a little bit more, and we can revisit at the next meeting.
What do you guys think?
I mean, I'm in favor of doing, the feasibility up front. I think it gives the town more surety in terms of, reducing as much risk as we possibly can. And it'll give the developers more, just an indicator that the town's committed and serious, and hopefully bring in more development interest as well, just being a little bit further down the road. So I'm in favor of it.
That makes sense.
Yep. Other than that, I think I'll have a more concrete update once I am able to get in touch with Laura and actually have that meeting. And I'll let you all know when that meeting will be. And I'm planning on inviting Amber as well to that.
Yeah, congratulations. All right, sounds good. Anything else you want to go over, Fiona, on that?
Not at the moment. I think, next meeting and putting in a little bit more. One of the suggestions that was made, and kind of what I was looking at, the research is, some sort of like visioning session at some point for those lots. I think we need to kind of, that's a little bit off, but just something to consider. And I can memorialize this all in an email and send it off to you all too.
Yeah, that's actually something I want to talk about with the goals review too. So we'll pick that part of the conversation up in a minute. All right. Number 4, review changes to the community preservation grant agreement. If my recollection is correct, there was just one paragraph where there were a couple of red lines. I think it was paragraph 4 and then paragraph 10. Has everybody had a chance to review the changes to the grant agreement? And if so, does anybody have any issues with the changes? All right. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to accept the changes to the CPC grant agreement as written.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none by roll call. All in favor, Brittany?
Aye.
Dan? Aye. Nicole?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Frisbee, aye. All right, motion passes unanimously. We have accepted the changes. I suppose now this goes back, we deliver the news back to the CPC and say we've approved it.
Yeah, this is the grant agreement we've approved, so they probably need to approve it, and
Yeah, then that's the thing.
then we have one.
All right, great. All right, select board report.
So, I don't have much except I'll just make a note that the select board did execute the extension on the PNS for 1727.
Great.
So that's about it from the select board standpoint.
All right. And just briefly, because one of the things, again, I've noticed over the years in local government is everybody comes up with goals and then they put the goals in a folder and they don't talk about the goals for the rest of the year. It's been a couple months since we've done these, and I know one of the things that was important to everybody was that we conduct outreach meetings around the time of town meeting. Now, it's April. Town meeting is in May. We've only got one more meeting before that town meeting, so it might be a little soon to put an outreach meeting before town meeting. However, I think if we are going to break ground on 1727 in May, it might make sense to do something in June and then do another one in October. So in that point, we're going to have some really, I think, positive news about, the schedule for construction for 1727 Upton Street, what it's going to look like, the number of units that we're going to have. We're going to have news about 25 Worcester Street, I think, that is going to be positive, and updates on the High Point Drive lots. So we'll have some things to talk about, specific, project-specific things to talk about. But we'll also have things to talk about, generally speaking, in terms of the ongoing education of Grafton residents about what affordable housing is and how it can help them. So any thoughts on doing something in June? Where we might want to do it?
The library seems like a pretty popular spot.
Yeah, library's a good spot.
I don't know what it's available, if there's any, already to take in events, but.
I really like the Apple Tree Arts
That's a good one, too.
place.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just feels a little bit more comfortable, and
We've done an outreach there. Remember we did the thing with the poster boards and when we were doing the housing production plan.
Yep.
Right.
it's an easy space to reorganize. So it's something to consider. The sort of high top tables and having people be able to mill around a little bit. If maybe we could, I think one of the things that's important for the trust to do is to take the RFP response that we got in the design diagrams and just maybe some summary information for 25 Worcester and get that out there. Just to your point, Ed, there is going to be some significant community interest in that. And what I don't want is to what happened with 1727.
Right.
So I don't want anybody to be able to legitimately say, I'm surprised by this.
Right.
People will, but
Yes. If there's going to be opposition or feeling about the project one way or another, you're going to get that eventually. Better to get it up front and say, look, I've been having outreach meetings well before we ever even secured financing for this. Should we invite Andy to that?
Yep.
I think so, absolutely.
Additionally, I did a webinar yesterday and with the MMA about citizens academies and the whole thing behind it. But a lot of the towns that offer these, some of them offer dinner with it each week as they're learning about it. And I don't know if that's helpful to entice more people to come out for something that they might not. It's usually dinner time. If we aimed it for like a 6:30 start and had some pizzas or whatever.
Food is always an enticement.
Yep.
It's a good idea. Okay. So if we aim for like a 6:30, so it's not too late, people with kids want to get home, but people coming from work need to get there. So maybe something around then, and then take like a Thursday night or something like that.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Most of the people not most of the people, some of the people that we'll get will be on other committees. So what's the day where there are fewest committees?
Wednesdays.
Wednesdays? Maybe we'll do it on Wednesday. All right, so I'll reach out to Apple Tree, see what their availability is like. If there's a fee involved, it probably is. I'll reach out to Andy, see what his availability is like, and we can talk about it next time about food and all that stuff. Does that sound good?
Great.
Okay.
Thanks.
What we'll think about for next time too is just what the agenda is, because again, some stuff's going to be very project specific, and some stuff will be very general. I am sure that if we start talking about a specific project, we're going to talk about general stuff, right? What's the need for this? What's the process like? Why here? Why there? Why now? What's the population going to be like? God, it's the rent's still going to be $2,500 a month. That's not affordable. That whole conversation, we'll get into that stuff.
Wonder if like EOHLC has materials that we could have like on the ready to just break down. Well, it won't be project specific, but state specific. Like, here's some information about affordable housing, what it is, what it isn't, and then just to help bolster what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's already available.
Yeah, I have a few articles and studies on things like that, like how higher density housing doesn't necessarily take away from your resources like schools, police, fire, all that kind of stuff. And then the city of Worcester did a presentation on affordable housing, like what 80% AMI meant, what 60% AMI meant, what kind of jobs fit into that type of salary. So it kind of like humanized affordable housing for people.
Yeah.
Love that.
Good idea.
I know the resources part is always a big part of the discussion because people think that, adding higher density housing is going to like take away from our schools or take away from our other resources. And that's not necessarily true.
Right. Yeah, good idea. I'll also check with MHP, probably has some materials we can use that might be able to help me too. Okay, fantastic. So I will try to coordinate this and then we'll put it on next month's agenda and nail down some specifics.
All right.
Good. Anything else about goals anybody wants to go over tonight? All right. So meeting minutes, March 13th and March 27th, 2025. Let's assume for the sake of argument that everybody's read them.
I move we accept the meeting minutes from March 13th and March 27th, 2025 as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor by roll call. Brittany?
But
Nicole? Nicole? Dan? Aye. Matt?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Frisbee, aye. Motion made and passed unanimously. Bill schedule. God, our lawyer wants to be paid. Jesus.
She deserves it.
Of course. The lawyers. All right. $420 for invoice number, whatever it is. Invoice number 1121. I will entertain a motion to direct staff to pay this bill.
Yeah, but can we just update the invoice? It still has the previous chair's information on there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Kathleen noted that error. There was something in her program where it would not let her change it. And
Okay.
I don't know if for next time it'll,
No, I
it
just-
will, something will be different.
As long as somebody else flagged it too, that's great. I
No,
missed
she
I
pointed
missed
out.
where she
She
sent
pointed
it out. Okay.
Yeah, and I tried to do that and it wouldn't work on QuickBooks. I couldn't figure out what the story was. But but next time, who knows? The computer will have blown up and I'll be using something else.
All right.
Well, I'll make a motion. We authorize staff to pay. Let's see, what's the invoice number?
1121.
1121 in the amount of $420.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor by roll call. Brittany?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Dan? Aye. Matt?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Frisbee, aye. Motion made and passed. Okay, that concludes our agenda. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by roll call. Brittany?
Aye.
Dan? Aye. Nicole?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Frisbee, aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.